So I finished applying gum. Make sure it's not stained. You can look for something and put on top of this place. This is the bottom. I've applied gum. You ensure that the right side of your fabric is done. Then I'm just going to place it on the wrong side of the fabric. Use my hand. I'll smoothen it out. I'll turn it. I'll also smoothen it out. I'll smooth any wrinkles that is on the fabric out. So guys, I'm just going to cut. So I'm going to leave some inches, like half inch excess fabric. I'm trying to prepare the bottom panel for the back, and I'm using my Africa print material. So I leave half an inch. I'm going to apply gum on these edges, then wrap this on it like this. I've applied gum on the edges. I'm just going to be folding this, the wrong side of the leather. You apply gum on this edge, then I'll fold this, then you apply here, fold it, bottom panel, installing our bottom stance or feet on it. But before then, let me do the side panel first. I'll just apply gum. The right side of this fabric is facing down, so I'm going to go this side panel on it. Then I'll try to smoothen it out. I'll turn. Once it smoothens out, I'm just going to trim, leaving excess fabric, at least half an inch excess. If you've been following my video, you should be used to this by now, because I do this often. I'm just going to apply gum on the edges, then I will fold in. Guys, I've finished applying gum on the edges. I'm just going to be folding in now. So I'll just put some gum here. So on this tip here, I'm going to put a bit of gum there, like this. And this side panel. So I'm just going to do the second one now. The bottom panel. I'm going to be installing or fixing the bottom feet to it, and it's going to be 4 bottom feet. Okay. I'm just going to be taking 2.5 inches by 1.5 inches. 1.5 by 1.5 inches. This place to this place is 2.5. Here to here is 1.5. So I'm just going to take the same measurements all through to the 2.5 by 1.5 inches. So I'm going to take the same measurement here too, because we are fixing 4 bottom feet. I've marked out where I'm going to be placing the bottom feet. So I'm just going to be using my seam part, cut tiny holes on this point. If it's too big, your studs are going to fall off. Okay, so once you insert it into it like this, you turn it. I'm going to be turning it this way. I'm just going to press down. Another thing you can do, you can use your cello tape to hold it in place. Remember, I'm still going to stabilize this entire bottom panel. That will kind of secure this in place. I'll take my bottom stand. Okay, I'll do these other ones. Just tiny, let it not be too big, please. This is the bottom panel. We are still trying to fix it. So the next thing I'm going to do here now, guys, is to kind of stabilize the bottom panel, because I want to make it hard. So to make this hard, I actually cut out some piece of leather. I'm going to be using 2 of these. I just reduced 0.5 inches all around. I'm just going to be gumming this to this panel now. Apply gum. So I've also applied gum here. I'm just going to lay this on top of this. Like this. So I've applied one layer. Because it's getting hard now. So I'm going to apply this next layer of leather to it, and before then I'll just quickly apply some gum. Yeah, I want it to stick very well. From when there's enough gum, it will be harder, like it will be stronger, and it will look more sturdy. So I just apply a bit of gum, and I'll use my brush to spread it out. I'll just take this layer here. I'm going to place it on it like this. Okay, so you can hit it in place with your hammer and repeat it. You can see how hard it is now, very hard. So I love the way it's turning out. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to be attaching the lining to it. Very soft to touch. I'll take my already prepared bottom panel. So I'm going to take my pen. I'm using the wrong side of suede material. So I'm just going to use this to measure out lining. So I'm using this one already prepared panel as a form of template to get the lining for the bottom part of the bag. So I'm going to take my scissors and cut out outside the line. Don't cut it to be too small. Better if it's too big, you can always trim off the excess. So I'm just cutting outside the line. Once you've cut outside the line, it's going to be looking like this. Okay, so I'm going to apply gum and place this one on top. Then use my hand to smoothen it out. To spread it out. Then I'll take this. Guys, this is the bottom panel. I've fixed the studs and I've fixed the lining, and very hard. Next, at the side panel, I'm gumming the lining to them. I'm not going to stabilize the side panels. I'm just going to apply gum. So I finished applying gum. I will take my suede material, which I'm using for lining. You can also use velvet or any material you prefer, but I prefer using suede and velvet for lining my bags. Cut out. I'm just going to trim excess line here. Make sure your trimming is straight and clean. I'm just going to top stitch on it now. So I'm checking if it's sewing. Where is it? I'm sewing the side panel now. Oops. Okay. I've done one. I'm just going to do the second one now. Bottom panel, two side panels, done the flap. Stabilizing this flap with 2 pieces of leather because I want it to be really thick, so I'm just going to be applying some gum. So I'll just keep this aside. So I'll let it dry. So once it has dried, I'm just going to pick it up and lay it on it like this. Use my hammer to kind of, so I will trim some excess off from this. I don't want some layer of leather to be here so that it will be easy for my machine to sew through. So I'll just make sure I trim some of the leather that is extending towards the edges. I'm going to lay another layer of leather on this. I'm going to be fixing the magnetic snap on the lining, not on the external. I'm going to be fixing 2 magnetic snaps and the washers that came with it. The magnetic snap is going to be fixed on this side of the lining. Okay, so I will turn to get the measurement of where I'm going to be positioning the magnetic snap. So what I did at this part that is slanted, I just measured 1 by 1 inches from each of the edges. On this edge, I just measured out 1 inch, marked out. Then I placed the 1 inch mark here. So I took 1 by 1 inch. So I first of all placed it using this straight part. I measured that 1 inch. Then I now place the 1 inch mark on that line marked out. So I'm going to do the same here. Then on that line, I'm going to place another 1 inch there. If you be following my videos, you'll be able to understand basically everything I'm doing here. I'm just going to place one of the washer on the center mark here. You place the middle of the washer there, just like this. I'll use this hole to determine where I'm going to be piercing through. So I'm going to do the same here. I'll place the middle of this washer on the middle of this line, this cross mark. I'm just going to mark. So yeah, I've marked them out. I'm going to be using my seam ripper to cut on these marks here. Guys, you're just going to cut tiny minute holes. Don't make them too big. A small cut. I prefer using my seam ripper. I'll take my magnetic snap, put it inside these holes. If I put my washer, I'm going to cut a small piece of leather to put here. That will stabilize it. I'm going to take my washer and I will use my arm to kind of put it backward. You can use your hand, it's very easy. It's not strong. So here is it. You can see how strong it is now. So I'm going to do the same here. Take this and I'll put it into this. So I'll take the washer. I'm going to put it into that. Make sure you always put something strong. That will make it very secured. Okay, and to just hit it. Okay. Alright guys, you can see how hard it is now. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to be placing the lining on it. So before I put the lining on top, I'm going to be applying gum so that it doesn't get stained. So I'm just going to put something on the table first. Then before I place this, I wouldn't want my work to get stained. And I'll take my lining. Then alright guys, so once I've done this, I'm just going to be sewing on this at the main panels. I'll be able to stabilize them with some piece of leather. It didn't get to the top because I'm going to be sewing the flap of this back to it, so I wouldn't want it to be too thick for the machine to sew through. That's why I didn't stabilize the top. I've cut out the lining for the 2 main panels, done the side panels too. I've attached lining and I've top stitched on them. I've sewed these parts, and the bottom panel I've attached some bottom feet. So guys, I'm just going to be applying gum now. I'll apply gum because I'm going to be laying my lining to it. So now I'll use this brush to spread the gum. Just basically apply gum. So I'll just use this to spread it. I've spread it like this. I'll let it dry. I'm just going to be putting my lining on top. Before I sew the flap to it, I'm going to be top stitching on this one, and I'm going to be using this green thread on the top and a black thread below, so I can top stitch on this one on the main panel. So I'm using green thread up. I'm going to be sewing the flap of the back to this button. To sew the flap, you see this pointed edge here? That's what I'm going to be placing here on this part. I use your gum to hold this in place rather, or you can use your tape. I'm just going to clip them. Then I will locate this one too. If you have a double-sided tape, you can use two. Take note of what I'm doing. This edge here, this one is going to be on the top of the main panel. This one here. Remember, we've talked about the measurements. We talked about the measurements in the part 1 of this video. I'm going to be sewing all around up to this point. I'm using brick thread at the top, and at the down I'm using black, since I'm using a black lining. So you can back stitch first. To sew, I'm just going to be using my hand. So I'll turn again. See the stitches. I'm going to pass the thread to the back. I'm going to be using my hand stitch needle, so I'll just pass it to the back and tie. As I said earlier, you can back stitch if you want. I'll just pass this thread. I don't want to back stitch, and tie it at the back. So this other one too, I'm going to pass it. Okay. I'm just going to be sewing another stitch here. This pointed point here, I'll mark a straight line and sew a stitch on it, like it's just going to be like a design. Okay. You don't have to, but I'm going to do that. Now, so I'm going to be sewing on this line. I'm basically just taking my time to sew because it's an outside or external stitch. Because there was chalk mark here, so I cleaned it. So the next thing I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be sewing the bottom panel to the main panel, one of the main panel that has a flap. So I'll just measure out where I'm going to be placing the bottom panel before sewing. For the position I'm going to be placing the bottom panel to sew, I'm going to be taking 1/2 inches, okay? So guys, I've measured out 1/2 inch where I'm going to be placing the bottom panel. So this mark here, don't worry about the barrow mark. The bottom panel is going to cover the mark. So before I place it and start sewing, I'm just going to apply a bit of gum. Yeah, you can make use of your double-sided tape. So I'm just going to use my gum, line of gum. Just place it there. Make sure it follow that line. You can use your hammer to hit it in place. So I'm just going to clip it. I'm going to be sewing from this point to this point. In sewing, I'm going to make sure that my machine foot is at the edge. So just watch the way I'm going to be sewing it. So remember, I'm just basically using my blackhead machine. I'm not using my industrial machine, so I'll backstitch. I'm using size 3 thread and size 23 needle for this project. So just take your time, so you don't have issue of thread cutting on you or the machine not able to sew through. So you can also pass your thread to the back and tie. In this case, I've back stitched. So I'll just cut. I'm going to sew this other panel to this bottom panel now, and I've measured out 1/2 inches on this. So I'm just going to be applying a bit of gum here. Don't worry, this gum stain is going to be covered. Back stitch first. Just make sure it follow that line, that chalk mark. I'm basically using my hand hard now. Remember, we are just using a simple machine, so you don't expect it to be fast since it's sewing a lot of fabric at the same time. So I'm using size 23. So if you are going to be sewing this kind of hard bag, make sure you use a strong needle, specifically size 23 for a black head machine like this. I'll be able to sew the bottom panel to it. Right, it's a flap. Okay, this is a flap of the bag. This is a flap of the bag. I've not put the side panel, though. By the time I put the side panel, the flap is going to move a bit up. That's the way I wanted it to be. I wanted the material to be obvious, more obvious than the Ankara. If you want the Ankara to be more obvious, you can actually increase the length. You can increase the length of the flap. Okay, depending on what you want. When you sew the side,